I paid my daughter rent for 4 years. Then she hid her wedding, so I let them get evicted for good. When I asked about my daughter's wedding date, my son-in-law told me it was 2 days ago. We only invited special people. 1 week later, my daughter called me. The rent is due. Have you paid it? She asked. I replied, I only help special people. My name is Tomas. I am 60 years old. And ever since my wife Clara died 10 years ago, my life has revolved around a single person, my daughter, also named Clara, in honor of her mother. I always wanted to give her the best, just as I did for my wife when she was alive. Raising Clara alone was not easy, but every sacrifice was worth it because I saw in her the same spark of life that her mother had, or at least that is what I believed until the day everything changed. I'm a simple man, a retired accountant who worked for 35 years at a transport company, saving every penny to ensure Clara never went without. When my wife passed away, I set aside my own dreams, traveling, maybe buying a little house in the countryside to make sure Clara had everything she needed, a good education, nice clothes, a secure roof over her head. And when she met David, her boyfriend, then fiancé, and husband, I thought my effort had been worth it. Clara was in love, and as a father, I just wanted to see her happy. David never quite sat well with me, if I am being honest. He was a tall guy with a smile that seemed rehearsed, as if he were always selling something. He talked a lot about his grand plans, a business that never quite took off, an idea that was always on the verge of closing. But in the 5 years I knew him, I never saw him work for more than 6 months straight. Clara, on the other hand, looked at him as if he were the most brilliant man in the world. I did not say anything. After all, love is blind, and my daughter seemed happy. So for her, I accepted David. I even helped him. When Clara and David moved in together, I paid the apartment deposit because they had no savings. It was a nice place in a quiet neighborhood with a rent of $3,000 a month. Clara worked as a receptionist at a dental clinic, but her salary barely covered her personal expenses. David, for his part, was always between projects. So, without them asking, I started paying the rent every month. It is temporary, Clara would tell me, until David gets something stable. I would nod, take out my checkbook, and pay. I did not want my daughter to live with worries. Over time, I did not just pay the rent. I bought a refrigerator when theirs broke down, a washing machine when Clara told me washing by hand was an ordeal, and even a flat-screen television because David insisted they needed something decent to relax with. When Clara got sick and needed emergency surgery, I covered the medical expenses. And when they told me they were getting married, I did not hesitate to offer them $50,000 for the wedding. It is a special day, I told them. I want it to be perfect for you. In total, over those 4 years, I calculate that I spent more than $250,000 on them. I did not regret it because every time I saw Clara smile, I felt I was doing the right thing. But everything changed one day. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was at home looking at old photos of Clara when she was a little girl. I got nostalgic, so I decided to call her to ask how the wedding planning was going. I was excited. I imagined the moment I would see her walk down the aisle, perhaps in a white dress like the one her mother wore. I dialed her number, but it was David who answered. "Hello, David, how are you?" I said, trying to sound cheerful. "Is Clara there?" I wanted to ask how the wedding plans are going, the date, the details. There was a silence on the other end of the line, the kind that makes you feel something is wrong. Then in a cold, almost sharp tone, David replied, "Tomas, the wedding already happened. It was 2 days ago. We only invited special people." I froze. I did not know what to say. I felt as if someone had punched me in the chest. Special people, I repeated in my mind. I, who had paid for half of that wedding, who had been there for them every step of the way, was not special. I tried to stay calm. 2 days ago, I asked, my voice trembling slightly, but nobody told me anything. It was something small, intimate, David said, as if explaining why I was not invited to a casual dinner. Clara wanted to keep it simple. "Is Clara there?" "Can I speak with her?" I insisted, feeling rage begin to mix with the pain. "No, she is busy now." "She will call you later," he replied and hung up without giving me a chance to say more. I stood there staring at the phone, my heart pounding. I could not believe it. My own daughter, the person for whom I had given everything, had gotten married without even telling me. I sat on the sofa with my head in my hands, trying to understand what had happened. What did I do wrong? At what point did I stop being important to her? I did not sleep that night. I started checking social media. Something I do not do much because I do not really understand how it works. But there it was, wedding photos. Clara radiant in a white dress smiling next to David. David's family was in all the pictures. His parents, his siblings, even his cousins. They were laughing, toasting, dancing. But I was not in any of them. Not a single mention, not one photo, not one message. I felt like a stranger in my own daughter's life. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions. I felt betrayed, hurt, and above all, foolish. How did I not see it coming? I had given everything for Clara and David, and they had left me out of the most important day of their lives. I tried to talk to Clara, but she did not answer my calls. I sent messages, but only received short replies. "I am busy, Dad. We will talk later." Every word was like a stab. 1 week later, the phone rang. It was Clara. Her voice sounded agitated, almost desperate. "Dad, the rent is due. Have you paid it this month?" she asked without even a greeting. I was silent for a moment, processing what I had just heard. After everything that had happened, after they excluded me from her wedding, this was the first thing she said to me. I felt a mix of rage and sadness that I could not contain. "Clara," I said with a calmness that surprised even me, "I only help special people." There was a silence on the other end. Then her voice changed. It became sharp, almost hysterical. What? What are you talking about, Dad? We need the money. The landlord is pressuring us." "Clara, I paid your rent for 4 years. I bought your appliances, covered your emergencies, even paid for part of your wedding. And what did I get? I was left out of your wedding. I found out from your husband that I am considered less than special. So, no, I did not pay the rent, and I am not going to." The argument that followed was one of the worst of my life. Clara called me insensitive, selfish. She said I did not understand how difficult things were for them. I did not stay silent. I reminded her of every penny I had spent on her and David, every sacrifice I made while they lived without a care. I told her I was tired of being an ATM for someone who did not value my presence. "Clara, I gave you everything," I said, my voice breaking. "But I am not a piece of furniture you can use when it is convenient. I am your father. You are not my father anymore," she yelled before hanging up. That night I could not sleep again. But it was not just sadness I felt. There was something else, something that was beginning to grow in me, a determination I had not felt in years. I realized I had spent too much time putting Clara and David above myself. I had sacrificed my own life, my savings, my peace of mind for people who did not value me, and that was going to change. The next day, I sat at my desk and started doing the math. I took out an old notebook and wrote down every expense I had made for them over the last 4 years. $3,000 a month for rent, $50,000 for the wedding, $5,000 for the refrigerator, $3,000 for the washing machine, $2,000 for the television, $15,000 for Clara's surgery, and the list went on. When I finished, the total took my breath away. $252,300, more than $250,000. I wrote it all down on a sheet of paper with dates, details, and amounts. It was not just an invoice. It was proof of everything I had given. I decided I was not going to let this go. I printed the invoice, put it in an envelope, and drove to Clara's apartment. When I arrived, I rang the doorbell. David opened the door with that same rehearsed smile that bothered me so much. "Tomas, what a surprise," he said, as if nothing had happened. "This is for Clara," I replied, handing him the envelope. "And tell her not to call me until she understands what family means." I did not wait for his response. I turned around and left. On the way home, I felt a strange mix of relief and pain. I knew that what I had just done would change my relationship with Clara forever, but I also knew it was necessary. For the first time in years, I was taking control of my life. When I got home, I called a locksmith. I changed the locks on my house because I did not want any surprises from Clara or David trying to convince me with tears or empty promises. Then I searched online for a recommended lawyer in my city. I found Mr. Morales, a man in his 50s with good reviews and a reputation for being fair but firm. I made an appointment for the following week. I wanted to protect my savings, what was left after years of spending it all on my daughter. I was not going to let anyone use me again. 2 days later, Clara called me. I did not answer, but she left a voicemail. Her tone was a mix of anger and desperation. "Dad, I cannot believe you are doing this to us. Are you really going to let us get evicted? You are our father. How can you be so cruel? David is looking for a job, but it is not that easy. Please, just this month. I swear we will pay you back later." I listened to the message 3 times, and each time I felt less guilt and more clarity. Clara was not asking for my help. She was demanding that I continue to be her lifeline as if it were my obligation. But I was no longer the man who paid without asking questions. I deleted the message and turned off my phone. That same week, I found out that Clara and David's landlord had started the eviction process. Apparently, they not only owed that month's rent, but also had debts with the bank for a new car they bought. I imagined David with his air of grandeur promising the landlord that everything would be sorted out soon while Clara tried to keep up appearances. But this time there was no one to rescue them. Meanwhile, I continued with my life. I started doing things I had postponed for years. I went to the market and bought ingredients to cook recipes my wife used to make. A beef stew with potatoes that filled the house with a warm, familiar smell. I enrolled in a carpentry workshop at the community center, something I always wanted to learn but never had time for because I was busy solving Clara's problems. I even started walking every morning in the park, enjoying the fresh air and the feeling of being alive, of being present for myself. One afternoon, while I was sanding a wooden board in the workshop, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Clara's landlord, a man named Don Raul, with whom I had spoken once when I paid the apartment deposit. "Don Tomas, sorry to bother you," he said in a weary voice. "I just wanted to confirm if you will be covering your daughter's overdue rent. I cannot wait any longer. I am going to evict them next week if they do not pay." "Don Raul, I appreciate the call," I replied, keeping my calm. "But I am no longer paying for anything for them. What Clara and David do is their responsibility now." There was a silence on the other end, and then Don Raul sighed. "I understand, Don Tomas. I am sorry things have come to this. Thank you for letting me know." I hung up and stared at the wooden board in front of me. I did not feel guilt, but I did feel a pang of sadness. Not for Clara and David, but for the little girl I once believed needed me. That little girl no longer existed, and I had to accept that. The eviction came 1 week later. I found out because Clara sent me a furious message full of capital letters and exclamation points. "We got evicted because of you. How could you do this to us? You are a horrible father." I read the message and deleted it without replying. There was no point in arguing with someone who only saw my money. Later I learned that Clara and David had moved into a much smaller apartment in a less nice neighborhood. They did not have the luxuries they had before. No flat-screen television, no new washing machine, no expensive dinners that David boasted so much about on social media. Clara started working at a clothing store, a job she would have considered mediocre a few months ago. David, for his part, was still looking for opportunities. But no one seemed to trust his grand plans. What surprised me most was learning that David's parents, the same ones who had been at the wedding toasting while I was excluded, now mocked Clara. David's mother told everyone that Clara was not up to her son's standards, that she did not know how to manage a household, that it was a disgrace they had been evicted. I felt angry imagining Clara facing those humiliations, but I also felt a spark of justice. She had chosen David and his family over me, and now she was seeing the consequences. Meanwhile, I continued with my new routine. The carpentry workshop became my sanctuary. I made a small table for my dining room, and every time I looked at it, I felt pride. It was not perfect, but it was mine, made with my own hands. I also started going out more with old friends, colleagues from my time at the transport company. We would meet on Fridays at a coffee shop to play dominoes, laughing at stories from the past. For the first time in years, I felt free, as if a weight I did not even know I was carrying had been lifted. Mr. Morales called me 1 week after the eviction to tell me the trust was ready, my savings were protected, and he had drafted a will that made it clear no one could claim anything without my consent. He also suggested I consider traveling, maybe taking that trip to the countryside I always dreamed of. "Tomas, you deserve it," he told me. And he was right. One night, while having dinner alone at my house, I thought about Clara. I wondered if she would ever understand why I did what I did. I did not want to punish her, although I am sure she saw it that way. I just wanted her to learn that love and family are not a transaction, that you cannot take everything from someone and then treat them as if they do not matter. Maybe one day she would understand, maybe not. But it was no longer my job to teach her. It has been 6 months since Clara and David were evicted. I found out through a mutual friend that they now live in a small apartment in a noisy neighborhood where the walls are thin and hot water is a luxury. Clara works as a cashier at a clothing store, a job she would have despised before when she lived off my checks. David, for his part, gave up his grand plans and now cleans offices at night. David's family, the same ones who toasted at the wedding while I was excluded, now point at them with contempt, calling them failures at family gatherings. A part of me feels a pang of pain for Clara. After all, she is my daughter. But that pang no longer controls me. I no longer carry her weight. I, on the other hand, am free. In the carpentry workshop, I finished an oak table that now adorns my dining room. Each grain in the wood reminds me that I can create something with my own hands, something no one can take from me. I traveled to the countryside as I always dreamed, and bought a simple little house with a porch from where I can see the stars. On Fridays, my domino friends fill my house with laughter and coffee, reminding me that life can be simple and good. Mr. Morales, my lawyer, secured my savings in a trust. No one will ever use me as an ATM again. 1 month ago, my phone rang. It was Clara. Her name on the screen made me hesitate, but I answered. Her voice was broken, choked with sobs. "Dad, it is me," she said, almost whispering. "I need to talk to you, please." I did not respond immediately. I felt a knot in my stomach, a mix of hope and caution. I had imagined this moment many times, but I did not know if I was ready to hear what she had to say. "All right, Clara," I said, my voice calm but firm. "What do you want, Dad?" "I am sorry," she finally said, her voice tearful. "I know I hurt you. I should not have left you out of the wedding. I should not have let everything get so far." I remained silent, letting her words float between us. I wanted to believe her, but the wound was still fresh. Finally, I spoke. "Why, Clara?" I asked, my voice low but laden with years of pain. "Why did you exclude me? I paid for half of your wedding, gave you a home, everything you asked for, and you left me out because I am not special. Explain it to me because I still do not understand." "It was David," she admitted almost in a whisper. "He and his parents convinced me. They said the wedding should be small, just for close family, that inviting more people would complicate things. I wanted to invite you, Dad. I swear I did, but David said that you did not fit in with them, that you were too simple. And his parents, they always made me feel like I was not enough, that I had to prove my worth to them. I got carried away, Dad. I was wrong. Every word was like a punch, but it did not surprise me. I had seen the contempt in the eyes of David and his parents, that arrogance of those who think they are superior. But what hurt the most was that Clara, my Clara, had chosen to please them instead of defending me. And for all those years, Clara," I continued, feeling the anger rise in my chest when I was paying your rent, your washing machine, your surgery, your whims. "Were you getting carried away then, too? Or did you just see me as a bank that never ran out?" "No, Dad, it was not like that," she said, but her voice sounded weak, as if she herself doubted her words. "I was always grateful, but I do not know. I thought you would always be there, that you would always help me. I did not realize how much we were hurting you. I do not know how to fix this, Dad," she whispered. "David, he is not the same anymore. His parents treat me like trash, and now that we have nothing, I realize everything you did for us. Please give me a chance." I wanted to believe her, but the wound was deep. I remembered the wedding photos, the laughter of David's family, his cold words on the phone. I remembered the years of sacrifice, the sleepless nights, the dreams I postponed for them. And I knew that even though I loved her, I could not go back to being the same. "I am not giving you money, Clara," I said with a firm voice. "If you want to earn something back, it will not be with words. It will be with actions, with time. A wound does not heal with an 'I am sorry.' Maybe someday we can rebuild something, but not today." I stood up, left money for the coffee, and walked out. Clara did not follow me, and I did not look back. That night, sitting on the porch of my little house in the countryside, I looked at the full moon. The $252,300 invoice was my liberation, the price of my dignity. For the first time, I am living for myself, and no one can take that away from me. As the curtain closes on the personal story, let's look at the bigger picture. What happened between Tomas and his daughter was not simply the story of a cruel moment or a single painful decision. It was the slow outcome of years of imbalance, years in which love, sacrifice, and responsibility were quietly transformed into entitlement. When generosity is offered without boundaries, society often praises it as devotion, especially in parents. A father sacrifices everything for his child, people say. A parent should always give. But hidden behind those comforting words is a dangerous expectation that love must always be endless, even when it is taken for granted. Over time, the kindness that once held a family together can become the very thing that allows disrespect to grow unchecked. In Tomas's case, the painful truth arrived in a single sentence: "We only invited special people." Yet that sentence was not born in a single day. It was the final expression of a dynamic that had been forming for years, one where gratitude slowly disappeared and support became assumed rather than appreciated. When I reflect on stories like this, I cannot help but think about how often people are told that setting boundaries means destroying the family. Many of us grow up hearing that confronting a loved one is betrayal, that silence keeps peace, and that sacrifice is the highest proof of love. But the truth is far more complicated. Silence can quietly teach others that our pain does not matter. Endless sacrifice can teach people that our limits do not exist. And sometimes, the most honest act a parent can take is the one that feels the hardest, refusing to continue a pattern that erases their dignity. I believe that what Tomas did was not an act of revenge, but an act of clarity. He did something many people are afraid to do. He stepped out of the role that others had assigned to him. He refused to be the invisible safety net that caught every fall while receiving no respect in return. And that moment, when he finally said no, did not destroy the family. Instead, it revealed the truth that had been hidden beneath years of quiet endurance. Real relationships cannot survive on obligation alone. They require recognition, mutual care, and the courage to acknowledge when something has gone wrong. You and I both know how complicated this can feel in real life. Love does not disappear simply because someone has hurt us. A parent may still feel compassion even after deep betrayal, but compassion without boundaries becomes self-erasure, and rebuilding trust requires more than apologies. It requires change over time. So here is the question that remains. After the story ends, if someone you love deeply treated you as invisible for years but only came back after life humbled them, would you open the door immediately out of love, or keep it closed until they proved, through actions not words, that they finally understood your worth